Hey, Dr. Tao, it's Chris. Um, just wanted to say sorry I couldn't get the software working online, so I guess I'm going to have to do it this way, where I just film it and talk about my PowerPoint as I go through it. But anyway, getting started, the article that I reviewed was the one I found called Zombie Ideas in Education, High Stakes Testing and Graduation Policies. And there were a lot of good points in this article that were made, a lot of points that weren't made in many of the other articles that I found. In most of the other articles, what I generally saw was how they're using testing now to kind of manipulate scores and how they could improve upon it. Where in this article, they get to the real meat of it that a lot of the other articles seem to just kind of dance around. So, getting into it, the article started off with an astonishing number of high school students. 40% of high school seniors in Rhode Island don't earn their diploma to graduate. And it's not from failing scores or anything else other than the fact that they are technically not proficient in their reading and math skills on the NECAP exam. And the NECAP exam is the same thing as PARCC is in Maryland, but it's the New England Common Assessment Program test. And it is a requirement for many New England states where you have to get passing score, not necessarily passing, but proficient scores in them to earn your high school diploma. And the ironic thing about it is that the NECAP program or standards itself specifically states not to use those tests as a graduation requirement. It's saying use these as an assessment tool to judge people's progress and then take that in the classroom and delve into that. So if a student doesn't do well in a certain area on that test, they're saying, well, here's your tool, we'll grade it for you, you can see where they're weak, and then go back in and reteach this certain part. But policymakers and politicians are the ones that have made this a graduation requirement, saying that in order to be college ready, these students have to be proficient in math and reading, and if they don't pass this test, then they aren't proficient, and therefore they're not college ready, and therefore they cannot earn a high school diploma, which seems like the backwards way to do it. But that's neither here or there. The policy makers are the ones that are labeling these kids and are saying, there's no hope for these kids if they can't pass this test. And that goes into the whole situation when a kid fails one of these tests, even from an early age, that makes them feel and puts them in a certain category to their own, where it's very hard for them to pick themselves back up and, move on from that. They think of themselves as failures. And the statistics are astonishing to how many fail a test on one of these standardized tests at an early age and then continue to fail them because they feel there's no hope, or they just simply hate these tests because they failed them, and there's no real help that is going into them after they fail one. For one, a lack of trying on their part, and for two, the teachers have enough on their own hands trying to get the rest of these students ready for these tests that maybe are marginal or could be on the verge of passing them or not passing them, but it's just an all-around bad situation. So rather than people blaming the standards and the tests themselves, like a lot of people now do with the Common Core, the blame should really be placed on the policymakers high in the Board of Education and the politicians, because they're the ones who are causing this high-stake testing. If it wasn't for them, if you talk to most educators, they would want it as a strictly as a what's the word I'm looking for? They'd want it strictly as, just a benchmark to see how the kids are doing. So that's something that this article really pushes to change. Moving on, as many studies show, minorities are the ones that are affected the worst from these tests. They do more. African Americans, Latinos, Native Americans, they do more poorly on these standardized tests than any other ethnic group does. And there's many reasons for this. None of them are because they're any less smart or any less capable of passing these tests. Is that they're not giving the opportunities that these other kids are given. In that, not necessarily on purpose, but a lot of these inner city schools have less funds to work with. They have more students, less technology, less materials in general, and it's horrible to say, but a lower quality of teachers a lot of times, because a lot of these teachers don't want the hard job of trying to work with these, underprivileged kids, which is a shame. But these tests unfairly label them and creates a stigma for them that they then wear the rest of their life, and that they hate school, they hate tests, and they deep down have to block it out some way from feeling that they're failures. And this causes a lot of trouble down the road for many. Now many get out of it, but a lot of them, unfortunately, because of the stigma that is put upon them with the test, they feel themselves as failures, and they don't go anywhere and don't push themselves through the rest of school because of that. So students are not alone in their responsibility for their high or low performance on these tests. It is because it is the quality of the teacher, because the teacher can make or break. Many teachers find these tests just as annoying and just as horrible as the kids do, being what they are now, not being a benchmark. But many of the teachers simply don't try or don't care about the test. And another thing is many students don't have the technology. So all of the new Common Core tests are moving toward a technology base, in that they're all taken on computer instead of paper and pencil like they used to be. And many of these kids aren't exposed to these underprivileged minority kids aren't exposed to a computer in a home setting. So what makes them think that they're going to be proficient at it in a test setting? And they're going to be confused by that. And a lot of times the teachers can't help them even with that simple fact of trying to figure out how to work a computer. I know there was an example in here of students seeing a bar with a little text box where they have to write a response to an answer, and they saw this one text box. Well, they didn't realize that there was a scroll down, so you could write as much as you wanted, but the kids just thought you could only write that much. So they wrote that much, but they got graded on only writing that much when they were supposed to write, 3 paragraphs more. And the shame is that the teachers weren't allowed to help them. The teachers saw it happening, but if the teachers had helped them, the scores would have been nullified. So that's definitely a problem in this testing too, but that's neither here or there. So the big takeaway point that I got from this article is that there needs to be an end to high stakes testing, and they need to be used as benchmarks to mark true progress and see where the students need work in. Because even after they take these standardized tests, the tests are different the next year, and there's no opportunity or time for the teachers to go back and work at where each individual student needed help with the last year, because they simply don't have the time. They're working for the new tests now. And too many times these tests really sink the students to points that they simply can't pull themselves out of, which is a real shame to it, but unfortunately, that's the way these high-stake tests go. So this article really hits the nail on the head for me, and it couldn't have opened my eyes more.